So within the area of the cybersecurity of elections, there's two main areas that I've been focusing on recently. So the first of those is essentially how we as voters interact with election technology and how that impacts public trust, how that impacts our opinions about elections. So I don't do any really of the back-end stuff of exactly what a voting machine is going to look like, or how do we work on the back end of what online voting looks like. I kind of look more at the user experience and how human beings are interacting with that technology. So in this case, how voters are interacting with the technology and how that has implications on how they trust their democracy, how they trust their elections. And so one thing that I'm really curious to know, and I'm doing a few studies to look into this, is essentially what is the impact of using technology in the voting process on how people perceive elections. So if you're not voting using a paper and a pen or and at a physical polling location, is that going to change how you perceive the confidence in the results? Are you going to be less likely to trust that your vote is going to be counted as intended? Because we know at the end of the day, an election is only as good as it is trusted and the results are accepted. So I'm doing some work looking at the relationship between what kind of technology you're using in the voting process or in the registration process, and then how that impacts your public trust. I'm also looking at essentially different tools that election management bodies can use to harness technology to attract voters to the polls or attract voters to register to vote who might not otherwise have gone out to the polls or who might not otherwise have registered to vote. So for example, in Canada, we now have online registration. So does that mean that more young people have been using it? Do more young people feel like they can trust and use that sort of a tool as opposed to other ways of registering to vote? And will that help integrate them into the political system? So I think that's a really interesting way, especially how technology can be used to access those population groups that wouldn't normally participate. And then the last area that I'm interested in is disinformation and misinformation. And largely at this idea of democratic resiliency. So how do we build a population that can see fake news or can see something that might not be super current, and how can they build those sorts of skills to know what they're seeing and to almost be inoculated against that having a huge effect on them. And we don't really know the best way to do that yet. So I've applied for a number of different grants that hopefully will allow me to test different tools that are out there to see if any of them have a really robust impact on helping voters better digest the sorts of information that they might get during a campaign.